Look at this shiny toy. Officer Bradley sneered, his heavy black tactical boot slamming onto the pristine asphalt of the rest stop. With a wet metallic spit, he snatched Marcus's commercial driver's license, held it up to the flickering neon light, and then ripped it clean in half, tossing the fragments into a puddle of dirty engine oil. He leaned in, his breath smelling of stale coffee and malice, his face inches from Marcus's calm expression. A dynamic, heavy-duty 2024 Peterbilt for a black trucker. Let's be real here. A boy like you doesn't earn a $250,000 rig like this by hauling legal freight. You're dirty, Vance. And by the time I'm done tearing this beautiful cabin apart, you'll be trading this leather seat for a cold concrete floor in county jail. He tapped his heavy metal flashlight against Marcus's chest, laughing under his breath. Did you honestly think putting on a nice shirt and driving a luxury rig would make people forget who you are out here? In this county, a black man behind a wheel like this is just a criminal trying too hard to look important. Go ahead, cry for help, call whoever you want. Around here, my badge is the law, and your dignity belongs in the grease under my heel. Marcus didn't move a muscle. His locked jaw was the only sign of life, his eyes staring straight past at the corrupt deputy, knowing that every single word coming out of the man's mouth was being recorded by a hidden matrix. If you don't want to miss how this arrogant officer uncovers a truth that will instantly end his career, make sure to stay with us until the very end. Before we dive into the dark events of that freezing night at Rest Stop 42, take a brief moment to comment below with your current location and local time, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button to join our storytelling community. You won't want to miss tomorrow's incredible story. The ambient humidity of the deep southern night hung thick over Interstate 95, a heavy, suffocating blanket that blurred the distant headlights of passing travelers into long amber streaks. It was exactly 11:14 p.m. when Marcus Vance guided his pristine, matte black 2024 Peterbilt 579 commercial semi-truck down the exit ramp toward Rest Stop 42. The massive vehicle was a marvel of modern engineering, boasting an aerodynamic chrome grille, customized midnight blue running lights, and a luxury sleeper berth that served as Marcus's mobile sanctuary during his cross-country hauls. Marcus was a man who commanded respect without ever raising his voice. Standing at 6'2", with neatly trimmed hair, iron-pressed tactical trousers, and a clean dark navy polo shirt, he exuded the quiet discipline of his former life as a military ranger. His hands, steady and calloused from years of service, guided the wheel with absolute precision. As he entered the brightly illuminated lot of the rest stop, Marcus calmly engaged the 5-speed manual transmission gear stick, a rare vintage modifications package he uniquely ordered for this heavy-duty commercial beast, and skillfully backed the massive trailer into a secluded parking space near the outer tree line. The truck slid smoothly into place, its air brakes releasing with a loud rhythmic hiss that broke the eerie stillness of the late-night air. Marcus cut the powerful engine, pulling the manifest clipboard from the passenger seat to review his late-night log. Everything was in perfect, meticulous order. His commercial driver's license, his active transportation, safety administration, clearances, and his exact cargo manifest, detailing 40,000 pounds of high-grade automotive components bound for a distribution center in Savannah, Georgia. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a vintage silver Omega Seamaster automatic watch, a priceless heirloom given to him by his late father, a decorated military veteran who had served 3 tours in Vietnam. The ticking hands pointed precisely to 11:18 p.m. It was time for his mandatory federally regulated rest break, but outside the quiet sanctuary of the rest stop was about to be shattered. Parked in the shadow of a rusted water tower across the asphalt lot sat a white and blue local county sheriff's cruiser. Inside the vehicle sat Officer Bradley, a veteran deputy whose 20-year career was marked by a long history of unchecked aggression, disciplinary warnings, and deeply rooted prejudices. Beside him sat Officer Miller, a 23-year-old rookie cop whose uniform still looked too large for his nervous frame. Bradley's eyes locked onto the black Peterbilt the moment its air brakes hissed. His fingers tapped aggressively against the steering wheel, his jaw tightening as he observed Marcus climbing down from the high cab. "Look at that Miller," Bradley drawled, his voice thick with a calculated malice as he adjusted his heavy leather utility belt. "A brand new customized 5-speed manual Peterbilt 579. That's a $250,000 rig right there. And look who's stepping out of the driver's side. A young black guy dressed up like he owns the highway. Out here in our county, a driver like that doesn't get a truck like that by hauling regular groceries. He's moving something else. Something heavy and something highly illegal." Miller shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his hands rubbing against his knees. "Sir, his parking maneuver was perfectly clean and he's within the commercial zone. We don't have an active tip on any trucks matching that description tonight." "I don't need a tip, rookie. I have my instincts," Bradley snapped, turning the ignition and rolling the cruiser slowly across the cracked pavement without turning on his emergency lights. "We're going to do a proactive safety check. Out here, these out-of-state drivers think they can use our highway as a smuggling corridor. We're going to remind him exactly whose county he's passing through." The cruiser stopped abruptly, at an angle effectively blocking the front bumper of the Peterbilt. The headlights of the police car cast long, intimidating shadows across Marcus's boots as he adjusted his clipboard. Marcus immediately recognized the aggressive positioning of the vehicle. His pulse remained perfectly steady, his internal tactical training instantly evaluating the threat matrix. He did not run. He did not make sudden movements. He simply stood beside his driver's side fuel tank, waiting with an expression of calm, neutral professionalism as the two officers stepped out into the humid night. Bradley swaggered forward, his heavy flashlight unclipped from his belt and held under his arm, his hand resting casually on the grip of his Glock 17 sidearm. Officer Miller followed 2 steps behind his face, pale, his eyes darting between his senior partner and the towering stature of the truck driver. The stage was set for a confrontation driven entirely by malice, an unprovoked display of power designed to humiliate a man purely because of his color and the luxury of his vehicle. "Evening, officer," Marcus said, his voice deep, smooth, and entirely respectful. "Just pulling in for my mandatory logbook rest break." Bradley didn't answer immediately. Instead, he flashed his powerful LED flashlight directly into Marcus's eyes, holding the blinding beam there for 5 agonizing seconds. Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't look away. He kept his stance loose and non-threatening, though his mind was already cataloging every detail of the deputy's uniform badge number and behavioral red flags. The psychological warfare had begun, and the silence stretched between them like a tight wire. "Let me see your paperwork, boy." Bradley finally spoke, his voice dripping with false authority as he stepped closer into Marcus's personal space. The bright beam of the flashlight illuminated the clean fabric of Marcus's navy polo shirt, catching the metallic gleam of the silver Omega watch on his left wrist. Officer Bradley lowered the light slightly, but his aggressive posture didn't soften. He held out a thick, leather-gloved hand, his fingers twitching with impatience. Marcus, maintaining absolute professional composure, handed over his folder containing his commercial driver's license, the active Department of Transportation health card, and the fully signed shipping manifest for the automotive cargo. Bradley snatched the folder with a violent jerk, intentionally letting several loose wait station receipts flutter out onto the damp pavement. He didn't bother to pick them up. Instead, he flipped through the paperwork with an exaggerated air of suspicion, his eyes barely reading the printed text, before he looked back up at Marcus with a condescending smirk. "Marcus Vance, huh?" Bradley read aloud, his voice dripping with mockery. "Address lists you out of Alexandria, Virginia. That's a long way from home, Marcus. And this paperwork looks a little too clean." a little too perfect. In my experience, when a black driver has everything neatly organized like this, it's because he's trying to hide something from the local law. Everything is fully compliant with federal highway regulations, officer. Marcus replied calmly, his eyes remaining locked on the deputy's badge. The manifest matches the seal on the back of the trailer. You are welcome to verify the registration numbers with the state database. Bradley's smirk instantly vanished, replaced by a dark, dangerous scowl. He despised the lack of fear in Marcus's eyes. He was used to out-of-state drivers trembling, stammering, and begging for mercy when pulled over in the darkness of his county. Marcus's articulate voice and unwavering gaze felt like a direct challenge to his absolute authority. "I don't need a database to tell me what's happening right in front of my face," Bradley barked, stepping so close that his chest nearly brushed Marcus's clipboard. Han yin chum chum vau chik dong ho omega ko kin trente Marcus, mat hun luelen su tam lam vadoki. Look at this watch. An Omega Seamaster. That's a $6,000 piece of jewelry right there. Tell me, Marcus, how does a simple truck driver afford a luxury timepiece like this? Did you buy this with the cash from your legal freight? Or did some kingpin give this to you as a bonus for moving his product across state lines? That watch belonged to my father, officer. He received it upon his honorable discharge from the United States military. Marcus answered, his voice dropping an octave, becoming colder, harder, though still entirely controlled. "I don't care about your stories," Bradley snapped. In a sudden, blindingly fast movement, he grabbed Marcus's left wrist with a bone-crushing grip, twisting it outward. With his other hand, Bradley unbuckled the silver clasp, ripping the historic timepiece clean off Marcus's wrist. Marcus's muscles instantly coiled like a steel spring. His military ranger training screamed at him to execute a tactical counter-joint lock, to break Bradley's elbow in 3 places and drop him to the asphalt within 2 seconds. His jaw locked so tightly that the muscles in his cheeks began to violently twitch, but he forced himself to breathe. He looked at Officer Miller, who had gone completely pale, his hands hovering nervously near his belt, terrified of his partner's unprovoked escalation. "Sir, you have no legal authority to confiscate my personal property." Marcus stated, his voice a deadly quiet whisper that vibrated through the humid air. "I'm seizing this under civil asset forfeiture regulations." Bradley lied smoothly, holding the silver watch up to the light, before casually sliding it deep into his own cargo trouser pocket, out of sight. "This watch is suspected to be an asset derived from illicit interstate commerce. It's evidence now, Vance. And if you have a problem with that, you can try explaining it to a judge next month. But right now, you're looking real hostile. Your body language is telling me you want to resist a law enforcement officer." "I am standing perfectly still, officer," Marcus said. "Shut your mouth," Bradley roared, his face turning an angry shade of crimson as he pulled out his heavy steel expandable baton, snapping it open with a loud metallic clank. "You've got a real attitude problem, boy. You think because you're driving a fancy luxury Peterbilt with a customized 5-speed transmission, you're above the law in this town. We know exactly what your crowd does when they get their hands on this kind of money. You come down here thinking our roads are a free pass for your garbage. Miller, get over here and secure his perimeter. This vehicle smells highly suspicious, and I'm conducting an immediate non-consensual search of this entire rig." A small family sedan pulled into a nearby parking slot, its headlights illuminating the scene. An elderly couple looked out in sheer horror as they saw the massive truck driver surrounded by 2 armed deputies, one holding a baton aloft. Bradley turned to glare at the witnesses, flashing his light aggressively at their windshield until they quickly drove away toward the main building. Marcus watched his father's watch disappear into the corrupt cop's pocket, his heart rate remaining at a calculated 60 beats per minute. The trap was closing, but the corrupt officers had no idea what kind of man they were pushing into a corner. The air temperature seemed to drop as the psychological tension reached its boiling point. Officer Bradley stepped back, his eyes burning with malice, as he pointed his heavy steel baton directly at Marcus's chest. The unprovoked theft of the watch had not broken Marcus's spirit, and that reality was driving the corrupt deputy into a state of uncontrolled rage. "Step away from the cab door, Vance," Bradley ordered, his voice echoing off the metal trailer of the Peterbilt. "Step out into the open area where my partner can see your hands. Do it now, or I will consider your hesitation as active resistance and deploy mechanical force." Marcus took a slow, deliberate breath, ensuring his hands remained completely visible. Fingers splayed wide as he stepped down from the metal runner of his truck onto the grease-stained asphalt. "Officer Bradley, under the protections guaranteed by the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution, you do not have probable cause to conduct a warrantless search of my commercial vehicle. My paperwork is flawless, my cargo is sealed, and I have committed no moving violations." "Did you hear that, Miller?" Bradley laughed, a harsh, mocking sound that contained no humor. "The boy thinks he's a constitutional lawyer now. Let me teach you a lesson about the real world, Marcus. Out here on this stretch of asphalt, the Constitution doesn't protect a black trucker moving weight through my territory. My badge is your Constitution tonight." Bradley lunged forward, grabbing Marcus by the shoulder of his navy polo shirt and violently shoving him backward. "Down on the ground. Get down on your knees right now." Marcus did not stumble. His balance was rock solid, his boots gripping the pavement with immovable stability. He could have easily swept Bradley's legs, driven his elbow into his sternum, and neutralized both officers before Miller could even unholster his weapon. But Marcus knew the larger mission. He knew that an undercover operative must endure the fire to catch the entire disease. He looked down at the dark, dirty Wungdaubahn lying on the cracked pavement, a thick mixture of engine grease, stagnant rainwater, and toxic chemicals. "I said get down on your knees, boy. Interlock your fingers behind your neck." Bradley screamed, his face inches from Marcus's, his breath hot and putrid. He brought his heavy leather boot down against the back of Marcus's left knee with a sickening, heavy thud. Marcus allowed his body to absorb the blow. He gracefully lowered his frame, his knees dropping directly into the cold, black puddle of grease. The toxic oil immediately soaked through the fabric of his immaculate tactical trousers, staining his skin, the freezing sludge a physical manifestation of the systemic degradation he was being subjected to. He raised his hands, interlocking his fingers behind his head, his face remaining a flawless, unreadable mask of stone. He did not utter a single cry of pain. He did not beg. Officer Miller stepped forward, his boots clicking nervously against the pavement. His hands were trembling violently as he reached for his handcuffs. Deputy Bradley, should we just run his name through the NCIC database first? Maybe we should call dispatch and verify the corporate carrier license before we proceed with the vehicle entry." "Shut up and do your job, rookie." Bradley snapped, his eyes never leaving the back of Marcus's head. "Keep your weapon trained on his spine. If he makes a single movement, if he even twitches a finger, you drop him. I'm going inside this cabin to find what he's hiding under these expensive leather seats." Marcus remained frozen on his knees, in the grease, his eyes staring straight into the darkness of the tree line. The humid night air felt like needles against his skin, but his mind was operational. Inside his right ear canal sat a micro-sized, flesh-colored communications matrix, completely invisible to the naked eye. With two subtle, imperceptible contractions of his jaw muscle, Marcus tapped out an encrypted danger signal, a silent, binary distress code that traveled instantly through a secure satellite link directly to a hidden federal server miles away. Bradley swaggered over to the pristine driver's side door of the Peterbilt 579. He grabbed the chrome handle, pulling it open with a violent jerk that caused the interior cabin lights to flood the space. The clean, rich scent of premium leather and polished wood grain wafted out into the damp night air. Bradley looked back at Marcus with a final triumphant smirk, before climbing up into the high cab, determined to destroy the clean sanctuary of a man he deemed inferior. On his knees, onchis in the dirt, Marcus Vance simply waited, his breathing slow, his spirit unbroken, knowing that the corrupt deputy was about to cross a line from which there was absolutely no return. Inside the high cabin of the 2024 Peterbilt 579, the pristine smell of premium black leather, expensive cherrywood trim, and specialized clean upholstery was instantly violated by the heavy grease-caked tactical boots of Officer Bradley. The corrupt deputy didn't just search, he destroyed. With a malicious grin twisting his features, Bradley used his heavy metal flashlight to violently tear open the beautifully stitched overhead storage compartments, sending neatly organized logistics maps, commercial driving manuals, and clean emergency safety vests raining down onto the floorboards. He cleared the passenger dashboard with a single aggressive sweep of his arm, shattering a custom-molded porcelain coffee mug that Marcus's mother had gifted him when he started his independent corporate shipping enterprise. The fragments clattered loudly across the luxury rubber floor mats, but Bradley didn't care. He was hunting for anything he could use to justify his unprovoked racial profiling, anything that could validate his twisted belief that a black man in a $250,000 truck had to be a high-level narcotics courier. Nothing but pristine paperwork and regular corporate garbage, Bradley muttered to himself, his voice thick with growing frustration as he stepped back into the spacious, custom-built sleeper berth at the rear of the cabin. The sleeper berth was Marcus's true sanctuary, a beautifully maintained private space featuring a neatly made orthopedic mattress, a small satellite television monitor, and a small built-in wooden desk where he spent his lonely nights studying federal law journals. Bradley's eyes locked onto the desk. Resting on top of a clean leather blotter was a beautifully preserved silver-framed vintage photograph. The image depicted a distinguished, heavily decorated older black man, standing proudly in his dress uniform, 3 rows of colorful combat ribbons, and a silver star gleaming brightly against his chest. It was Marcus's late father, a heroic military ranger who had given his life's health to his country. Bradley picked up the frame, his lip curling in a display of pure, unchecked hatred. Look at this trash, trying to look like heroes. With a deliberate, cold calculation, Bradley didn't just set the photo aside. He tossed it onto the dirty floor of the cab, raised his heavy caked boot, and brought his heel down directly onto the center of the silver frame. The protective glass shattered into 100 jagged webbed lines, fracturing the image of the decorated veteran beneath a layer of dirty road grease. Bradley ground his heel into the broken glass, ensuring the destruction was total, before kicking the ruined frame deep under the front passenger seat. Outside, kneeling in the freezing puddle of oil and asphalt grime, Marcus heard the distinct, sharp sound of shattering glass echoing from inside his open cab door. His jaw muscles locked so violently that a thin trickle of blood began to seep from his lip where his teeth bit down. His hands, interlocked tightly behind his neck, trembled with a massive surge of pure tactical adrenaline. He knew exactly what was on that desk. He knew what Bradley had just destroyed. Officer Miller, standing 2 steps behind Marcus with his service weapon drawn, saw the sudden terrifying shift in the driver's physical energy. Marcus's broad shoulders had become completely rigid, his massive chest expanding with a slow, deadly rhythm that looked like a coiled predator preparing to strike. Miller's hands began to shake so violently that the tactical light attached to his Glock 17 flickered wildly against Marcus's spine. "Sir, please don't move," Miller stammered, his voice cracking with genuine terror. "Deputy Bradley is just conducting a standard structural inspection. If you cooperate, we can get this over with quickly. Please just stay down." Marcus didn't reply. He closed his eyes, forcing his mind back into the ice-cold psychological baseline he had developed during his elite military operations overseas. He recited a mantra of discipline, knowing that retaliation now would only allow the corrupt system to bury the truth under a narrative of a hostile suspect. He remained on his knees in the sludge, his uniform stained his father's memory, desecrated, holding on to his fury with an iron fist as Bradley's destructive rampage continued unabated inside the vehicle. The sound of tearing fabric and breaking plastic continued to echo from the high cab for another 5 minutes, before Officer Bradley's frustration turned into a sudden, triumphant gasp. Deep within the structural base of the sleeper berth, concealed directly beneath the custom orthopedic mattress support frame, his flashlight beam had caught the dull, dark gray reflection of heavy ballistic steel. Han da Tim Te Tu Han Mun. Bradley yanked the heavy mattress completely off its tracks, throwing it carelessly into the front driving area, revealing a heavy military-grade biometric steel lockbox bolted directly into the truck's structural chassis. The safe was a high-tech masterpiece featuring a reinforced titanium locking bar, a thick digital keypad, and a glowing blue biometric fingerprint scanner embedded into the center of the handle. There were no brand names, no commercial logos, and no serial numbers stamped on the exterior. Only a small, matte black plate that read, "Federal Property, Unauthorized Access Prohibited." Bradley's eyes went wide, a greedy, ecstatic grin spreading across his face. He completely ignored the warning text, his mind instantly racing with visions of millions of dollars in illicit drug cash. Secret financial ledgers or high-grade contraband that would guarantee him a massive promotion and permanent fame within the local department. "Miller, get your ass up here right now!" Bradley screamed through the open door, his voice cracking with frantic excitement. Miller glanced nervously at Marcus, who remained perfectly still on his knees before carefully backing up and climbing into the cab. His eyes went wide as he saw the heavy steel safe exposed beneath the bed frame. "Sir, that doesn't look like a standard commercial lockbox. Look at that biometric interface. That's government-grade hardware. I don't give a damn what it looks like," Bradley yelled, his hands trembling with greed as he banged the steel butt of his flashlight against the reinforced titanium lid. The metal didn't even scratch. He turned and leaned out of the cab door, glaring down at Marcus with a look of predatory malice. "Vance, get up here right now. Move your hands to your sides. Slowly, climb up these steps and open this box." Marcus slowly stood up from the Vung Dao Ban, his tactical trousers soaked in black grease. He climbed into the cluttered, ruined sanctuary of his cab, his eyes instantly tracking the broken frame of his father's photograph beneath the seat, but his face remained a mask of pure stone. He stood in the narrow space between the driving seats, looking down at the exposed safe. "Open it, Vance," Bradley snarled, unholstering his Glock 17 and pointing it directly at Marcus's chest. "Give me the digital bypass code or place your thumb on that blue scanner right now. If you refuse, I am arresting you for felony obstruction, seizing this entire rig, and I will use a hydraulic plasma torch at the station to rip this safe open anyway." Marcus looked directly into Bradley's eyes, his voice dropping into a deep, chillingly calm frequency that filled the tight space of the cabin. "Officer Bradley, I am giving you your final legal warning. The contents of this container are highly classified under federal statutory protections. If you force the opening of this vault without a signed warrant from a federal district magistrate, you will cross a threshold that will permanently alter the course of your life, your career, and your freedom. Walk away, now return my property, and let me finish my route." Bradley burst into a loud, arrogant roar of laughter, tapping the barrel of his weapon against Marcus's collarbone. "You think your little threats work on me, boy? I told you I am the law in this town. You don't tell me what's classified. Open the box right now, or I swear to God, I'll drop you right here and claim you reached for my service weapon." Marcus looked at Officer Miller, whose face had gone completely bloodless, his hands hovering in absolute panic. Marcus knew the time for submission was over. The corrupt officer had sealed his own fate. With a slow, calculated movement, Marcus reached his right hand down toward the glowing blue biometric scanner. He pressed his thumb firmly against the glass interface. A sharp, high-pitched electronic chime echoed through the silent cab, followed by the deep, heavy thud of multiple automated titanium locking pins sliding back within the steel frame. The door of the vault slowly clicked open, revealing a truth that would shatter Bradley's world forever. The heavy steel lid of the hidden safe rose smoothly on automatic hydraulic struts, casting a stark, cold white light across the interior of the dark sleeper berth. Officer Bradley immediately lunged forward, his greedy fingers reaching deep into the container, expecting to pull out tightly wrapped bricks of $100 bills or vacuum-sealed packages of illegal substances. But his hand froze entirely mid-air. His breath caught violently in his throat, and the cocky, arrogant sneer on his face vanished so rapidly it looked as though he had been struck by a physical blow. Resting inside the custom-molded foam interior of the safe was not contraband. There was no illicit cash. Instead, resting in the center of the top compartment was a heavy gold-plated badge bearing the unmistakable polished eagle seal of the United States Department of Justice. Below the badge, encased in heavy protective laminate, were the official high-level credentials of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The bold black letters read, Special Agent Marcus Vance, Joint Interstate Smuggling Task Force, Undercover Operations Division. Beside the gleaming gold badge sat a heavy-duty military-grade tactical radio with a glowing satellite uplink indicator, a specialized Glock 19 operational sidearm equipped with a premium carbon fiber suppressor, and a compact digital terminal that was currently streaming a live high-definition data feed. The entire cabin fell dead silent. The only sound was the faint rhythmic electronic hum of the satellite radio, maintaining its secure connection to a federal matrix. Officer Bradley went pale, his skin turning a sickly ash-gray color under the fluorescent interior lights of the truck. His hands began to tremble so violently that his service weapon slipped from his numb fingers, clattering loudly against the wooden desk, before sliding onto the floorboards. Han kong the thoduk. Officer Miller looked over Bradley's shaking shoulder, his eyes widening to the size of coins as his gaze locked onto the gold FBI badge. His knees literally buckled, his back hitting the cabin wall with a heavy thud as a cold sweat broke out across his forehead. Oh my God. Oh my God, Bradley. What did you do? He's a Fed. He's an undercover federal agent. Marcus Vance slowly straightened his massive 6'2" frame. The submissive, compliant truck driver persona he had maintained for the past 45 minutes evaporated into thin air, replaced instantly by the cold, terrifying authority of a high-ranking federal operative. His eyes, previously neutral, now burned with a lethal, focused intensity that made Bradley instinctively take a step backward, his back hitting the edge of the mattress. "Pick up your weapon, Officer Bradley." Marcus said, his voice no longer respectful, but delivering a command that carried the absolute weight of the United States government. Bradley didn't move. He couldn't move. His arrogant bravado had completely collapsed, leaving him looking like a small, pathetic man trapped in a cage of his own making. I didn't know. Vance, look, you didn't identify yourself. This was just a routine traffic safety check. Shut your mouth, deputy. Marcus snapped his voice, a sharp, decisive blade that sliced through Bradley's pathetic excuses. He reached into the safe, pulling out the secure satellite radio, and flicked the master toggle switch. The device immediately lit up with a brilliant blue display, and a crisp, authoritative voice instantly filled the tight space of the cabin. Agent Vance, this is Mobile Command. We have been monitoring your biometric distress signal and your audio feed via the Matrix. Are you secure? Marcus kept his eyes locked onto Bradley's terrified face. Command, this is Vance. My cover is entirely blown. Rest Stop 42 has been completely compromised by two local units operating under an unauthorized illegal color of law profiling action. Deputy Bradley has illegally seized my personal property, forced entry into a federal storage unit, and threatened the life of a federal agent with his sidearm. Initiate the immediate tactical shutdown protocol for this entire sector. Copy that, Agent Vance. All tactical units are rolling now. Impact in exactly 9 minutes. Maintain your position and secure the suspects. Marcus dropped the radio onto the desk, reached down and cleanly picked up his gold FBI badge, pinning it directly to the front of his navy polo shirt, right above the heavy black grease stains that Bradley had forced him to kneel in. He looked down at the corrupt cop, his jaw set in a line of unyielding steel. You wanted to know whose county this is, Bradley? It belongs to the federal government now, and your 20-year run of terrorizing drivers on this highway has just come to a permanent, catastrophic end. The suffocating silence inside the ruined cab was broken only by the rapid, shallow breathing of Deputy Bradley. The dark ash gray of his skin seemed to deepen as he looked from the gold-plated FBI badge pinned to Marcus's chest down to the encrypted digital terminal. Officer Miller was entirely frozen against the back wall, his hands raised in a posture of immediate trembling surrender. He knew that the line his senior partner had crossed did not just violate department policy. It carried a fast-track ticket to a federal supermax penitentiary. Marcus Vance stood in the narrow space, his broad shoulders squared, commanding the room with absolute authority. He reached down into the open safe and pulled out his encrypted mobile datapad, tapping the screen to reveal a highly detailed map of Interstate 95 marked with precise red coordinates, surveillance timestamps, and a list of local registration plates. For the past 14 months, a joint federal task force has been tracking an active multi-state human trafficking and high-grade narcotics smuggling network operating directly through this corridor. Marcus said, his voice dropping into a terrifyingly calm, rhythmic frequency. Rest Stop 42 was selected as our primary operational trap tonight, at exactly 11:45 p.m. A commercial transport truck carrying 16 undocumented victims and 40 kilograms of illicit freight was scheduled to pull into the rear lot for a coordinated federal interception. I was positioned here as the anchor tracking their approach with an array of hidden sensors. He took a step closer to Bradley, his heavy boots clicking against the shattered remnants of his father's silver picture frame. But you just couldn't help yourself, could you, Bradley? Your deep-seated prejudice, your absolute arrogance, and your desire to terrorize a black truck driver overrode every single piece of professional training you ever received. By staging this illegal, unprovoked stop, by forcing me out of my cab at gunpoint, and by creating this loud, violent scene under the neon lights, you have illuminated this entire sector to the syndicate's lookouts. The target vehicle spotted your cruiser's lights from the highway and executed an immediate aggressive U-turn 3 miles north. You didn't just violate my civil rights tonight, Deputy. You actively dismantled a multi-million-dollar federal sting operation and allowed a major human trafficking cell to slip back into the dark. Bradley's mouth opened and closed like a fish suffocating on dry land. He tried to draw breath, but his throat felt as though it were being crushed by the sheer weight of the truth. Vance, Agent Vance, listen to me. It was a complete misunderstanding. The luxury truck, the 5-speed manual modification, it matched a profile we had on a commercial freight thief out of Georgia. We were just doing our due diligence to protect the county. I can help you locate the target. I know every single back road, every hidden barn, and every abandoned logging trail in this jurisdiction. You won't be helping anyone, Bradley. Marcus snapped, his eyes flashing with a dangerous, lethal light. You are no longer an officer of the law. The moment you used your position to strip a citizen of his constitutional protections under color of authority, You became nothing more than a criminal with a government-issued piece of tin on your chest. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out his tactical burner device, activating a secondary recording log. And let's not forget your little act of personal enrichment. He pointed his finger directly at Bradley's heavy cargo trouser pocket. Officer Miller, step forward right now. Miller jumped as if he had been struck by an electrical current, his boots shuffling quickly over the cluttered floor mats. Yes, sir. Yes, Agent Vance, I had nothing to do with this. I swear I told him we didn't have a warrant. I told him the driver was within his legal rights. Keep your mouth shut and answer my question, Marcus commanded. Did you witness Deputy Bradley physically assault my person, twist my wrist, and forcefully confiscate my father's silver Omega watch without logging it into the official county evidence matrix? Yes, sir. Miller blurted out, tears of panic swelling in his young eyes. He ripped it right off your wrist, Agent Vance. He put it directly into his right pocket. He does it all the time with out-of-state drivers, sir. He calls it the highway tax. I was too terrified to report him to Internal Affairs because his cousin is the precinct captain. Please don't let them lock me up with him. Bradley turned his head sharply, glare burning into the rookie. You little rat! Quiet! Marcus's voice boomed through the cabin like a clap of thunder, completely shattering the remaining fragments of Bradley's composure. The corrupt deputy flinched his entire body, shrinking back onto the mattress. Nobody moves. Nobody breathes until my team arrives. You wanted to be the judge, jury, and executioner on this highway, Bradley. Well, the real system is about to pull up to your door, and it doesn't give a damn about your precinct captain cousin. The countdown on Marcus's satellite terminal ticked down to 0 with a sharp electronic beep. Suddenly, the oppressive quiet of Rest Stop 42 was torn apart by the synchronized thunderous roar of high-performance engines accelerating down the Interstate 95 exit ramp. The blinding, brilliant glare of multiple high-intensity high beams cut through the humid night mist, casting massive shifting shadows across the asphalt lot. 3 heavily armored midnight black Chevrolet Suburbans tore across the cracked pavement at a furious velocity, executing a perfect military-grade tactical box maneuver around the local sheriff's cruiser and Marcus's Peterbilt. The heavy vehicles slammed to a halt, their tires screaming against the asphalt, completely sealing off every single escape route. Before the dust could even settle, the heavy doors of the SUVs flew open. 6 elite federal agents clad in full black tactical armor helmets and protective vests bearing the bold yellow letters FBI stormed out into the open air. Their high-caliber M4 carbine rifles were raised, their tactical weapon lights cutting through the darkness like laser beams as they flooded the perimeter of the truck. Federal Bureau of Investigation, drop your weapons and identify yourselves. Nobody move. A powerful, booming voice commanded through a tactical megaphone. Marcus Vance stepped out onto the high runner of his Peterbilt cab, his gold badge catching the strobing blue and white lights of the federal vehicles. He held his hands out to his sides, his face calm, his posture completely controlled as he descended the metal steps into the open lawn. Hold fire. This is Agent Vance. The perimeter is secure. The 2 local suspects are inside the cab. The senior tactical commander, a stern gray-haired man named Special Agent in Charge. Arthur Sterling moved forward with a team of 3 agents, their rifles pointed directly at the open driver's side door of the truck. Secure the cab, remove the occupants now. 2 federal agents surged up the steps of the Peterbilt like wolves. They grabbed Deputy Bradley by his heavy uniform collar, dragging him forcefully down the metal runners. Bradley offered no resistance. His limbs were completely limp, his face a hollow mask of shock as his boots hit the asphalt. They threw him face first onto the grease-stained pavement, right into the center of the same dirty Vung Dao Ban, where he had forced Marcus to kneel just 20 minutes prior. Get your hands behind your back. Do it now. An agent barked, pulling Bradley's wrists behind his spine with a violent twist. The loud, heavy metallic clank of heavy-duty federal steel handcuffs locking around his wrists echoed through the rest stop. The steel bit deep into his flesh, but Bradley didn't even cry out. He just stared blankly into the dirty grease, his face covered in the toxic sludge of the road. Officer Miller was led down next, his hands already secured behind his head, his body shaking with deep, convulsive sobs, as an agent neatly patted him down, removing his service weapon and his radio before securing him with heavy zip ties. Agent Sterling stepped up to Marcus, his eyes tracking the heavy black oil stains that covered the front and knees of Marcus's tactical trousers. He reached out his hand, gripping Marcus's shoulder with a deep, silent respect. "Are you injured, Marcus?" "I'm functional, Arthur," Marcus replied, his jaw tight, his voice a steady, low rumble. "But the operation is dead." Bradley's unprovoked stop tipped off the syndicate's scouts. The target truck turned around 3 miles north. "We lost the cargo and the victims." Sterling's face turned into an expression of cold fury. He turned on his heel, walking over to where Bradley lay prone in the grease. Sterling reached down into Bradley's cargo pocket and pulled out the historic silver Omega watch, holding it up to the light, before placing it gently into Marcus's open palm. Then Sterling looked down at the corrupt deputy with absolute contempt. "Deputy Bradley," Sterling said, his voice dropping into a deadly quiet register that made the room of the rest stop go completely silent. "You are being placed under federal arrest. The charges include obstruction of a federal investigation conspiracy to interfere with a high-level civil rights operation and felony grand larceny under color of law. You thought because you carried a county badge you could use your prejudice to hunt citizens in the dark. Well, you just hunted your way into a federal indictment that will dismantle your entire precinct from the top down. I have rights." Bradley whimpered into the grease, his voice cracking, all of his previous arrogance completely erased. "I want my attorney. I want to speak to the sheriff." "Your sheriff is currently being served with a federal administrative subpoena by 20 agents in town," Sterling answered coldly. "You're done, Bradley. Lift him up and put him in the transport." 2 agents hauled Bradley to his feet, his uniform soaked in black engine oil, his face smeared with dirt, looking like a common street criminal as they shoved him into the back of an armored SUV. The door slammed shut with a heavy final thud, locking the corrupt officer away in a dark, soundproof box from which there was no escape. The early morning sun began to break through the thick horizon, casting long, brilliant golden streaks across the asphalt of Interstate 95. The high-intensity emergency lights of the federal vehicles had stopped strobing, replaced by the calm, methodical routine of a completed federal sweep. The white and blue local county cruiser was currently being hooked up to a flatbed trailer seized by the FBI as physical evidence of a civil rights violation under color of law. 3 weeks had passed since that freezing, humid night at Rest Stop 42. In a grand wood-paneled federal courtroom in Charleston, South Carolina, the room fell silent as the Honorable Judge Evelyn Carter took the bench. The gallery was packed to capacity with regional reporters, high-ranking law enforcement officials, and members of the community who had endured decades of unchecked profiling on the state highways. Deputy Bradley stood before the bench, no longer wearing the crisp, authoritative uniform of a county sheriff. Instead, he was dressed in a brilliant orange federal jumpsuit, heavy iron shackles connecting his wrists to his waist, his shoulders slumped forward in complete and total defeat. His face looked worn, his eyes staring blankly at the polished mahogany floorboards as the federal prosecutor read the absolute terms of his sentence. Given the defendant's systematic abuse of public trust, his history of predatory targeting, and his direct obstruction of a federal anti-trafficking operation, the United States government requests a maximum penalty, the prosecutor stated firmly. Judge Carter looked down at Bradley through her reading glasses, her expression filled with a cold, unyielding disgust. Deputy Bradley, you used a badge, a sacred symbol meant to protect the vulnerable, as a weapon of personal malice and racial intimidation. You looked at a hardworking citizen, a decorated military background veteran, and you decided that his skin color and the quality of his vehicle made him a target for your greed and hatred. You believed you were untouchable in your small corner of this state. You were wrong. She slammed her gavel down with a sharp, echoing crack that vibrated through the silent courtroom. Bail is permanently denied. On all federal counts, you are sentenced to 15 years at ADX Florence Supermax with no possibility of parole. Let this sentence serve as an immovable warning to any officer who believes their badge grants them a license to strip an American citizen of their fundamental human dignity. Bradley didn't speak. His hands trembled violently as the U.S. Marshals stepped forward, grabbing his arms and leading him out through the heavy side doors of the court. His 20-year reign of highway terror was officially over, his name added to the Federal Registry of Disgraced Criminals. Outside on the grand stone steps of the courthouse, a massive crowd of digital storytellers, civil rights advocates, and everyday citizens had gathered, their phones lifted to capture the departure of the federal team. Officer Miller, who had fully cooperated with the internal affairs investigation, had received a suspended sentence and a permanent lifetime ban from ever working in public service again. The local sheriff's department had been placed under a strict mandatory federal receivership program, every single dashcam and logbook subjected to weekly independent review. Marcus Vance stepped out into the bright morning sunlight, wearing a sharp, tailored dark gray suit, his uniform shirt replaced by a clean silk tie. In his vest pocket sat his father's silver Omega Seamaster watch, its crystal perfectly repaired, its automatic movement ticking with an unbroken rhythmic precision. Beside it sat the silver frame of his father's photograph, entirely restored by the Bureau's Asset Recovery Division. He walked down the steps with the same calm, immovable dignity that had saved his life on that asphalt road. He didn't offer a celebratory statement to the flashing cameras. He didn't need to. The truth had already spoken for itself through the scales of federal justice. He walked directly to his matte black Peterbilt 579, which sat parked near the courthouse square, its chrome grille gleaming brilliantly in the summer light. Marcus climbed back up into the high cab, settling into the comfortable black leather seat of his sanctuary. He fired up the massive engine, the powerful vibration humming through his chest, a deep reminder that his mission was far from finished. He engaged the manual transmission, checked his side mirrors, and smoothly merged the massive commercial vehicle back onto the open highway, heading toward his next destination, under the protection of the law and the unyielding strength of his own character. This story reminds us that true authority does not come from a piece of metal pinned to a uniform, nor can it ever be stolen by those who abuse their power in the dark. Human dignity, honor, and respect are non-negotiable rights that belong to every individual regardless of their profession or the color of their skin. When the system fails, the truth will always find a way to step into the light and hold the corrupt accountable. Thank you so much for traveling with us through this intense journey of justice and resilience. If Marcus's silent strength touched your heart today, please leave a like to support our content. Share your thoughts in the comment section below, and subscribe to our channel right now so you never miss our daily dramatic narratives. Have an absolutely wonderful day, and stay safe out there on the road.